Feminism changed the way that we named hurricanes, and it's the only reason why men's names are even included on the list. For centuries, hurricanes didn't have official names. They would be identified by either when or where they happened. Examples of this include the 1900 Galveston hurricane or the Labor Day hurricane of 1935. Obviously, things got very confusing very quickly, and the public really struggled with keeping track of hurricanes. The first person to actually regularly give cyclones names was Australian meteorologist Clement Wragge in the late 1800s. He initially used Greek alphabet letters and sometimes Roman and Greek mythology characters, then famously began using names of politicians that he didn't like. During World War II, U.S. military meteorologists that were stationed out in the Pacific actually used their wives' and girlfriends' names to keep track of typhoons informally. For a brief period, the U.S. military also used the phonetic alphabet, which was something the U.S. Air Force had been doing since 1947. And while it worked for a little while, things got confusing again because then they changed the alphabet. Now it's 1954, and the United States Weather Bureau has decided to use women's names to track these storms. And while it did work, it made storms easier to monitor. A lot of women did not love the idea of being named after these deadly and destructive storms. By the 1960s, a lot of women began speaking up about this.
Carol destroyed Louisiana or whatever. You know, it was always a hard-driving headline with a woman's name. And I didn't like that one darn bit.
One of the biggest voices was civil rights and feminist Roxy Bolton, who famously said, "Women are not disasters." Bolton dedicated her life to helping others. She founded women's shelters in Miami, she helped get maternity rights for flight attendants, and she eradicated all male dining rooms across Florida. In 1972, a newspaper based out of Maryland actually wrote about Bolton speaking at the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration Hurricane Season Planning Conference. It's a mouthful. She said, "As long as people can name hurricanes after us, it's just another way of putting women down." According to the article, she was rather partial to dubbing the storms himicanes, even similar to Wragge mentioned the idea of naming storms after United States senators.
I said, Dr. Johansson, I have a solution. I think you will like it. Oh, what is it, Mrs. Bolton? And I said, we'll name hurricanes for United States senators. Oh, he was just mad as all get out. He said, you would embarrass our senators nationally and internationally? I said, oh, you don't mind degrading and humiliating women.
He suggested that we alternate men's and women's names every other year. Bolton replied, "We've already been blessed for 18 years. Enough is enough." In 1979, hurricanes did change to alternate between men's and women's names, which is a system we still use today. Instead of alternating years like the associate director had suggested, we just alternate every other name on the list. The list rotates every 6 years, and if a hurricane is especially deadly or destructive, the name gets retired. Examples of that include Katrina, Helene, and Andrew. While the history of naming hurricanes spans hundreds of years,